Martin Hubert once resided in Paris, captivated by the charm and elegance of the historic city. He had a deep appreciation for art and literature, particularly admiring the works of the renowned realist author Gustave Flaubert. However, 7 years ago, Martin made the decision to return to Normandy to manage his father's bakery, which has since become the highlight of the quaint town. Recently, a batch of his baked goods was unfortunately burnt, leaving his wife, Valerie, both surprised and upset. Martin is also deeply concerned about his neighbor, Charlie, fearing he may be contemplating suicide. After finishing work, he rushes to Charlie's home, only to find him tossing his late wife's belongings into a fire. In a moment of urgency, Martin manages to rescue the girl's diary before it is consumed by the flames. This series of events began 6 months prior when Martin spotted a car arriving next door while he was gardening. The new neighbors, an English couple named Charlie and Gemma Bovery, piqued his interest, especially since Gemma bore a striking resemblance to the protagonist of Flaubert's famous novel. The following day, the Boverys visited Martin's bakery, where Gemma eagerly sampled the bread, inhaling its delightful aroma, and Martin found himself unable to look away from her. A chance encounter while walking his dog led Martin to realize that Gemma had stirred feelings within him that he thought were long buried. Later that evening, Charlie knocked on the Jobert's door, seeking assistance after a power outage in his home. Martin readily agreed to help and accepted an invitation to share a glass of wine. As the conversation flowed between Martin, his wife, and Charlie, Martin's gaze remained fixed on Gemma, and he couldn't shake the lines from the book about Madame Bovery's discontent with her mundane family life. That's precisely how the girl appeared at that moment. Suddenly, her thoughts were interrupted by a mouse scurrying right beneath Gemma's feet. She let out a scream and immediately began discussing the idea of buying poison, which alarmed Martin. He remarked that poison often leads to unintended mishaps. Now Martin found himself spending each day in the company of his neighbor. He either observed her from his window or anxiously awaited her arrival at the bakery. On one occasion, the baker even invited Gemma into the kitchen to try her hand at baking bread. Martin closely watched her, taking in every detail of her figure. During one of her trips to the store, Gemma encountered a couple. They extended an invitation for her and her husband to dinner and offered them a job opportunity. Gemma works as an interior designer, while Charlie specializes in restoring antiques. Martin attended this dinner with Valerie, continuing to gaze at the object of his desires. The hostess led Gemma to a room she wished to have repainted. She initiated a conversation about exercise equipment and fitness, subtly suggesting that Gemma could stand to lose a few pounds, which deeply affected her. A few days later, Martin ran into Gemma at the park. He complimented her figure, putting her in an uncomfortable situation. She hurried home, but at that moment, a bee flew under her dress and stung her on the back. The girl screamed and called for help. With trembling hands, Martin unbuttoned her dress and managed to catch the insect, which had left its sting behind. With no other option, he agreed to suck out the venom, and Gemma readily consented. Hearing the commotion, a young Frenchman named Hervé, who lived in a nearby mansion, rushed over. As Martin explained the situation, Gemma lost consciousness. The two men quickly took her to the hospital, where she began to recover the following day. A couple from England arrived in Bovery. While flipping through a magazine, Gemma spots her former fiancé, Patrick, who had betrayed her trust in the past. She often feels a mix of sadness and anger, as Charles is perpetually absorbed in his books or busy in his workshop, neglecting the issues with the ceiling and faulty wiring. Later, Gemma heads to the market, where she catches the attention of Martin, who is standing on the store's porch. He observes her while reciting lines from a novel, occasionally adding his own thoughts. Out of the blue, he notices Hervé approaching Gemma and engaging her in a light, casual chat. Their next encounter occurs in a store near the wine section. The young man suggests the finest drink and invites his new neighbor to visit his centuries-old mansion. As Gemma drives home, Martin speeds past her car, but she remains oblivious to his presence. Before reaching her turnoff, she veers toward the mansion. Martin decides to follow her but hesitates to peek through the window once he sees her enter, ultimately driving away. That evening, during a dinner with neighbors, Gemma sits beside Martin, who notices a distinct mark of passionate affection left by the young Frenchman on her neck. From that moment on, the baker begins to keep a close eye on his neighbor. It's easy for him to do so as she confidently steps out in a dress and heels, often taking walks with her dog. However, in reality, she spends her time in intimate moments with Hervey, and they later meet again at the bakery. Gemma purchases bread and a croissant, but forgets them at the checkout. The baker is eager to return to his neighbor, but as he approaches her house, he overhears passionate sounds. Knowing that Charlie is away in London, he realizes who is keeping her company. Unable to deliver the forgotten croissant, Hay heads home and spends the night in the kitchen, contemplating his feelings. When Charlie returns, Gemma and Herv's affair is still very much alive. The girl takes another long stroll with her dog, prompting the man to realize that his marriage is likely on the verge of collapse. At Hervey's estate, the couple engages in a fervent encounter on the table. Gemma accidentally knocks over a delicate porcelain figurine, shattering it into 2 pieces. The young man is deeply distressed, as the figurine holds significant sentimental value for his mother. To soothe him, the girl picks up the broken pieces and asks her husband to fix it, keeping the client's identity confidential. Martin is consumed by thoughts of wanting to end Gemma and Herv's relationship. He is honest with himself, refusing to mask his feelings with notions of morality or camaraderie among men. He acknowledges that his feelings stem solely from jealousy. After some contemplation, Martin resolves to put an end to Gemma and Herv's affair, no matter the cost. The following day, Gemma checks her mailbox and finds a letter that appears to be from Herv, stating that their relationship has come to an end. Without concealing her emotions from her husband, she rushes to Herv's home, where he is being lectured by his mother. The woman is furious not only because her son is neglecting his studies, but also due to the missing cherished figurine. At the estate's gate, Gemma receives a text from her boyfriend, informing her that he must return to Paris and cannot accompany her to London for their planned getaway. Upon returning home, Gemma intends to speak with her husband, but he anticipates the conversation and begins packing his suitcase, leaving his unfaithful wife behind. The next day, Gemma encounters Martin and requests his assistance in translating the letter. The baker finds it difficult to focus on the text as he gazes at the young woman. Their silence is broken when a mouse scurries across the floor, prompting Martin to kill it. He then spots a bag of rat poison, which angers him, and he urges her to keep such dangerous substances out of the house. In her spare time, Gemma occupies herself by helping her English neighbor with home repairs. In that moment, she comes across Patrick, a family friend who seems genuinely pleased to see her and appears eager to rekindle their connection. The following day, Gemma arranges to meet Martin, but he fails to show up. When the baker steps outside, he spots Gemma in Patrick's embrace. Later, while at the restaurant, Gemma confesses to her ex-fiancé that her actions were a fleeting lapse in judgment and expresses her deep regret. Upon returning home, Gemma begins packing her belongings, deciding to sell the house and head back to London to reconnect with her husband. In the process, she discovers the repaired statuette and leaves a heartfelt voice message for Charlie. Not far from her home, she encounters Martin. She apologizes for missing their meeting and invites him for a drink to bid farewell. During their chat, it is revealed that Martin was the one who sent the letter pretending to be Herv. Understanding his reasons, she kisses him and asks him to leave. Soon after, Martin arrives with a basket of freshly baked bread as a parting gift. However, it is Patrick who knocks on her door, making another attempt to start anew. While tending to the garden, Martin notices a taxi pull up to the neighbor's house, and Charlie steps out. The baker feels hopeful that things are returning to normal, but moments later, Charlie rushes out of the house, crying for help. Tragically, it is revealed that Gemma has died. Martin suspects rat poison is the cause, but the detective asserts she suffocated, strangled by a piece of bread. The baker feels responsible for the tragedy and confides in Charlie during the funeral, but Charlie blames himself for not intervening when he found Patrick and Gemma in a compromising situation, leading to a fight instead of helping his wife. Each man carries the weight of guilt for what transpired. As Martin exits the cemetery, he glances back and spots Hervey, who is there to pay tribute to his cherished girlfriend as well. Half a year later, fresh neighbors move in, capturing Martin's curiosity.